and it was an extraordinary strike, the 85 strike, and it was the women's advisory groups and support groups who really kept the strike going in a way, and we had solidarity from all over the world.
I'm a striking miner's wife, and I'm the mother of 2 striking sons. And I'll tell you something else, I'm proud of the lot of them.
And out of that began the beginnings of a new left. But unfortunately, the leadership was planning to build on Thatcher and claim that they were following her policy, and that was what led to the Blair period.
When Harold Wilson resigned, sort of midway through the Labour government that was elected in 1974, that was the first time that you were involved in a leadership election.
When Wilson went in '76, there was a genuine vacancy again, so I put myself forward with a publisher pamphlet of alternative policies, and I lost it. In '81, when there was a vacancy for the deputy leadership, I stood against Healy.
I'm not perfect, everybody knows that. Even Tony Benn isn't perfect. Bloody hell.
And was defeated by a fraction of a percent. But it's amazing, really, that I got as far as I did. But I felt the right thing to do was to use the democratic mechanism of the party in order to put a series of alternative policies to them.
And was that the beginnings of the kind of mood inside the Labour Party that came to fruition in the 1980s, where people said, look, I think there's something that Labour government, the '74 Labour government, has done wrong. We don't want it to do that again. We want to have a different kind of leadership, a more left-wing leadership.
Yes, I think broadly speaking that's true, but then the alternative view, the view associated with New Labour, was that it would have to follow Mrs. Thatcher's economic policies. And when Blair was elected leader in 1994, he said New Labour is a new political party. He set up a new political party. I never joined New Labour. And then he tried to call anyone who disagreed that it was Old Labour, but it wasn't for him to rename our party. But that what means that, in effect, Thatcherism lasted from 79 to, well, until 2007, really, when Blair went.
And that period, I mean, people will probably find it difficult to recall now, but although there were always criticisms about internal democracy in the Labour Party, you could turn on the television and watch Labour Party conference, or in your case you would have been present at the conferences, and there were real debates and differences of opinion, and quite strongly expressed.
Anthony Wedgwood Benn, Bristol South East Divisional Labour Party. Madam Chairman, I come to the rostrum today to speak on behalf of the old age pensioners of the year 2000. If I am allowed to survive to the age of 75, I shall enjoy Dick Crossman's half pay, and unless I can help it, £3 a day from the House of Lords.
And that really is something that was part of the Labour movement then that really isn't now.
Now, I think the determination to wind up party democracy was at the heart of New Labour.
It is a fraud what is told in the newspapers every day about the left. For the left is demanding the right to govern ourselves. And I will not accept from anybody, colleague or opponent, the argument that we are undermining representative democracy.
For example, to be called at a party conference now, you have to indicate what you want to say, and if they don't want to hear it, they don't call you. And the domestic democracy of the party has been wound up. For example, the chairman of the party has always been the most senior member of the National Executive Committee. and that meant the party had a voice on the national stage. Now it's Mr. Blair adopted the Conservative principle of appointing a chairman. So I think the degree of damage done by New Labour to the structure and nature of the Labour Party is going to take a lot of rebuilding.
And for the last 20 years, the socialist argument has really declined. What finally killed off the policy that I think we're now witnessing in its most acute form was not the Labour left. It was when the IMF came into the cabinet in 1976. I'll never forget it. And they said, you've got to cut public expenditure by £4 billion. And international pressure forced the Labour government towards a monetarist policy, not actually one that they particularly wanted. And then that created or played a part in the winter of discontent. Then you get a Conservative government. And now we're going back to Victorian policies, which will lead to permanent slump, social division, and destroy our capacity to earn our living.
And those arguments that you began really in or were very associated with in the Labour Party in the late 1970s and early 1980s, do you feel that people looking back now are more, in a way, convinced that you were right than they were at the time?
Well, I don't think it's a question of whether I was right or not. It's a question of whether the arguments have survived. And you see the campaign for Labour Party democracy, which is very important, joined with John McDonnell and the new Labour Representation Committee and the People's Charter. So these ideas are still there coming together. And if by any chance Labour were to be defeated in the 2010 general election, I think you'd find these ideas would come out very, very strongly.
Join us next week as we look at the Thatcher years, Tony Benn's role in the rise of the Labour left, and the Great Miners' Strike of 1984-1985.